Welcome to The Business Mind. Join me, Mark Fechner, as I sit down with business leaders to discuss their real-world challenges and formulate forward-thinking, creative solutions. We focus on real people with real issues, and we tackle those issues in real time. I don't have the answers. I help you find the answers within you. Sometimes all that is needed is just a slight change in perception. The Business Mind Show starts now. Good morning, everyone. I am Mark Fechner. Welcome to The Business Mind here on transformationtalkradio.com, the show that features our guests' pursuit of excellence through the process of one-on-one coaching. If you would like to be part of our conversation, I would welcome your comments and questions. On the transformationtalkradio.com website, there is a little section that allows you to enter comments and questions. Please feel free to utilize that. Or if you would prefer, go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Transformation Talk Radio. And I'd love to hear what you have to say as we go through. My very able producer, Jacob, will monitor that and share those comments with us as we go forward. So today I am thrilled to have this person as my guest. I've known her for about 8 years, roughly, I think. But she is probably the youngest entrepreneur I have ever met. I've always been incredibly impressed with her sense of business, her business sense and whatnot. She's been doing both of these businesses for about 12 years. She is first and foremost the owner and president of RSP Printing here in the Chicago area, and also the executive director for the BNI Chicago region here in Chicago. Please welcome Miss Rachel Cherny.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I was a lot younger 8 years ago. I bet you know a lot of entrepreneurs my age now.
Yeah, we all were a lot younger 8 years ago.
Right.
So, Rachel, please tell us a little bit about your businesses.
Yeah, sure. So I've been involved in the printing business since I was almost about 16 years old. That's a funny story for, I know you know the story, but back when I was in high school, I had told my parents that I wasn't really interested in higher education in college. And the punishment for that, growing up in a first generation household where education was very important, was that at 16, I was told that I needed to go to college immediately. So instead of getting grounded, we didn't get grounded in my house. We got more fun punishments. So I got handed the catalog for our local community college and told to pick a night school class. And so I had to start night school immediately.
Wow.
Because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a couple creative pursuits. I've had little businesses ever since I was about 6 or 7 years old. I got business cards for my 10th birthday. That's all I wanted. I just wanted my own business cards for my little business I had.
Okay.
So, graphic design and printing kind of piqued my interest as I flipped through that course book. And I took my very first class. I learned about offset lithography and I was hooked. And then I went full-time night school when I was still in high school. To learn the trade of printing. And from there, I found out you could have bachelor's of science in it. I really thought I was going to be a press operator running big printing presses. And you can't tell I look kind of tall on Zoom, but I didn't grow anymore after I turned 16. And nobody wants to be on a 100-pound roll of paper on the other end of it, lifting it with somebody who's only 5'2" and doesn't weigh much more than that roll of paper. So my choices were management or sales.
Yeah, there you go.
Because I had sold shoes at the mall while I was going to night school and going to high school, I thought, let's get into print sales. And that's really how I found my way back to Chicago after college. I was selling printing for a local business here. And one thing led to another, and I became involved with a lot of local networking. I was in a couple chambers. I was in NABO, a women's group, some things for young professionals, just doing a lot of networking. And that's when I found BNI, Business Network International. And right away, it was really different than what I was experiencing. At this point, I'm 22 years old. So, some time has passed since that very first, since my first roll of the AB Dick printing press.
There you go.
And it was incredible to watch business owners and salespeople working together, even though they were in different professions, different companies. I'd never seen that level of collaboration. My experience with networking was always either a bunch of people trying to yell sales pitches at each other, right? Not really
Hmm.
listening, but trying to sell, or, people there not for the most effective reasons, or just, bad follow through, all that. But with BNI, it was like, wow, there's consistency, there's a plan, there's a program, and that really worked well for me, and the style that I take on in my sales. And so I became a BNI member back in May of 2010. Anyone who's listening who's not familiar with BNI, the organization is worldwide, and we have a number of groups here in the Chicagoland area. And the hallmark of BNI, other than the weekly meeting and all the rules, people always know BNI for all the rules, it's one person per profession. And so when I first went to BNI and I saw this group, I was looking around. I said, "Where are all my competitors? There are no printers here." Whereas the chamber's full of printers.
Hmm.
There's a network after work full of printing companies. And so I snagged my seat right away, applied, became a member. And within 5 months of being in BNI, I had now had my go-to accountants, attorneys. I knew a business banker on a first name basis. When you're 22 years old, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
Not
that's a
all my
huge deal. Yeah,
peers
yeah, yeah.
know professional people like that. And as you get to know people, and this is how Mark and I really connected, you talk about your goals and your accomplishments and what you really want to do in your business and your life. And I shared with many people that story about getting business cards for my 10th birthday and all the little businesses I had. And I constantly heard, "So when are you going to start your own printing company?" And I go, "Oh, no, 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 I'm only 22. Oh, I can't, I just started working at this company 2 years ago." And within 5 months of being in BNI, it eclipsed every other sales and marketing activity I was doing: the direct mail, the social media, the search engine optimization, the cold calling, lead lists that I had. And so when I approached my boss and said, I don't really want to do traditional sales anymore, we had a big heart to heart, and it ended in me deciding that it was time to go start my own business. And so that was October of 2010, and my BNI chapter really stepped up. I mean, when I gave them the news, you would have thought, like, that they were all my parents. They were so excited. They were. My parents had a different reaction when I called and told them I was quitting my job to start my own business, because some people I'm in a networking group told me it was a good idea.
Yeah,
But
there
yeah,
you
so
go.
it was a really inspirational experience to go through that, like learning how to be a networker, learning how to pass
Hmm.
referrals, and that was something the BNI program really helped me with. And then my chapter was so supportive. And with that, once I got involved in BNI at that level, and once I started my own business, I realized that I wanted to see what was available for me in a larger capacity with BNI. At the time, there were 6 groups in Chicagoland. And then I found out later that it was national and international. And so I reached out and I said, "Hey, how do I get involved in BNI in Chicago? Here's my story." It helped me start my own business, fast track my success. And so one thing led to another, and I took on a volunteer role and then a part-time role. And now I'm the executive director, the regional director for BNI in Chicago. So that's kind of my whole last 12 years in a minute or two.
There you go.
And
And
that's how that all started.
and Rachel has I mean, she's done a remarkable job since you've been the executive director. You've grown this region by at least 15 chapters.
Yeah. So in my volunteer and part-time years, I helped them add a couple more groups, because BNI is only one person per profession. There are a lot of people who were locked out in Chicagoland. If you can only have one real estate agent in a group and there are only 6 groups, that's only 6 real estate agents who can participate in BNI,
Yeah.
6 business coaches, 6 printers. And there was a big demand for this kind of networking. And there still is. We get multiple calls a week of people who can't get in, who want to start. And so at this point, and then once I really took over in 2013 and 2014, we went from that initial 6 when I first found BNI to we're at 32 chapters right now,
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
3
it's
in
been
process.
it's a pretty remarkable. This is what I'm talking about when I said I've always been impressed with your sense of business and your go getism. It's always this tiny person who is just a fire plug of
you know,
activities.
that's been a funny thing about all this Zoom networking, is that, I don't spend a lot of time. This might be a coaching call for another time. Before Zoom, I didn't spend a lot of time looking at myself. So I don't
Hmm.
really, really see this like petite person. So I just kind of hear the message that I give, and public speaking is such a big part of me. So that was a little bit of a mind
Yeah.
trip of she's aged a bit in the last 12 years. We still have a bit of a young
But
looking.
you've aged very well, I must say.
Thank you. And I think that some of this brings us to why I am so excited to be here, is that as I grew my printing business in tandem with BNI, there did become a tipping point where I no longer had the hours in the day or the hands
Hmm.
available on my own, and I had to start hiring people, which was not anything that I ever thought. I thought I was going to be a press operator.
Right.
I thought I was going to be a salesperson working for a big printing company. And then as an entrepreneur, once you expand beyond a certain point, in order to provide the level of service and the quality of products that you want, you need more people.
Yeah. So that kind of brings us right to what started our conversation today is
Mhm.
this balancing act that you have mentioned between empowering your employees and feeling like you're micromanaging them. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so very timely. I actually just sat down with my very first full-time employee last week, just by happenstance. We're still quite close friends, and he was a freelance graphic designer. He's now employed somewhere else, but he was freelance, and I would hire him from time to time to do work with me. And we just kind of really enjoyed working together. And I never had an employee, and I knew it would be a good fit first step to have a known entity, someone that I knew, because I'd never set up payroll before. I had never had an employee handbook of my own.
Hmm.
It had to look into workers' comp insurance, all that. And so it was nice to have somebody that knew me and I knew them. And there was going to be a little bit of patience as we figured that out. Like he didn't come in he came and worked at my kitchen table with me.
Mm.
That was employee number one.
Yeah.
Um, and it was tough. It is tough because there's the temptation that you want to help all the time, right? Or you have a hard time in the beginning, right? You have a hard time letting go and delegating,
Hmm.
and then sometimes you let go too far, and that person either doesn't know what to do. They sometimes feel like and I've heard this feedback. So now over the years, I've had a number of full-time W-2, part-time, 1099, like you name it. I've had a lot of different types of team members, and sometimes you pull away too far. You want them to have the freedom to make certain decisions and empower them, but then they feel like you either don't trust them because you're not giving them enough to do. So they feel like, and I've gotten this feedback from employees. I've had people leave and tell me this. They like, I felt like you didn't trust me because you weren't giving me things to do, or um any number of things. So it's definitely, I took a handful of business classes in college, and I think one of them one time had like 1 week where we talked about HR and employees, and that was it.
Yeah.
So I have no formal training in this, and it's that delegation of the task list that can be really tough.
So in figuring out this challenge of the balancing act, what is it, what's the challenge for you? You've been running your own businesses now for 12 years.
Mhm.
You've got some experiences. What still persists to be the challenge?
I think that it's like you said, I've got this can-do attitude, and sometimes I see something and I want to fix it, right? I just want to take care of it right away. In the time it will take me to explain to someone else, I could just have it done, right? That's classic business owner issue.
Hmm.
Or every so often you get burnt once, right? You have an employee make one mistake, and then you're a little gun shy, right? You're a little hesitant to ask them to do certain things again, or ask anybody to do certain things. So I think that's the push and pull. And then there's the guilt and the fear factor, is, am I putting too much on them? I know many of us have had that bad boss or bad manager that just dumped everything on us and didn't really think about how certain things would impact us, right? I already have this big project that I'm struggling to get done, and now you're going to put something else on top of me,
Hmm.
right? So there's definitely a a balancing act, to use your terminology, that I feel like I still haven't mastered.
Okay. All right. We're going to take a quick break here. Um, uh, Remember, this is the Business Mind with Mark Fechner. If you would like to make comments and add to this conversation, please go to the comment section on transformationtalkradio.com website or the Facebook page. When we come back, we are going to go into this into further detail and see if we can't come up with some kind of solution for Rachel to understand the guilt, the fear, and how to move beyond that for now. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Back to the Business Mind with Mark Fechner. My guest today is Rachel Cherny, and we're going to be talking about her challenge of the balancing act of how you empower your employees and not micromanage them. Before we continue, Rachel, tell people how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, definitely. So you can find me if you're interested in learning more about BNI, especially if you're in the Cook County, Chicagoland area. You can find more on our website, bnichicago.com. Our chapters are easy to visit. A lot of them meet using Zoom or at their various locations. So bnichicago.com. Another great way to get in touch with me is by email, as my first name, Rachel, Rachel, at bnichicago.com. If you're interested in learning more about my printing business, there's more information on our website, rspprinting.com. That's two P's, RSP Printing. And you can follow me on social media at BNI Rachel.
And I've done a lot of that
Yes,
lately.
across multiple platforms at
Yes,
BNI Rachel.
exactly. So let's get into this. So the thing that I'm intrigued by is after 12 years of doing this and coming up with your own system,
Mhm.
there's still this underlying guilt, fear, whatever the emotion is, of your employees feeling not feeling utilized or wanted enough. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I've gotten some feedback in the past when I'm not delegating enough that there's fear on both sides, right? I'm afraid of putting too much on people, and then they start to fear for their job or their role if they're a 1099 contractor because they feel like they're not doing enough. And if I'm not giving them enough to do, right? So there's kind of this push and pull. And I don't want to be the type of boss that is like always in someone's ear and always, in their pocket, texting, calling. But I also don't want them to, as an employer, I don't want them sitting around with nothing to do because I'm paying them.
Right.
So, what is the best way? And so right now where we're at is that my main employee, the one that full time, we work hand in hand really close together. We have a morning huddle where we spend, anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes kind of going over our task list for the day, dividing things up. And then we do something we call the triage at around 3 p.m. We have a quick phone call where we see how the day went. And that's been working pretty well. But there are definitely times where that 9 a.m. huddle comes up really fast. And I've had a meeting from 7 to 9 a.m. beforehand. And I feel like I haven't really had the time to sit down and figure out what I even want to do for the day. So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a matter of planning more weekly or monthly or what that looks like. And then when it comes to some of our more part-time employees or our contractor type employees, sometimes I feel like I'm so busy that I can't sit down and figure out what they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost easier for me to be like, just to have an easy week this week. And then they're worried about their job security because if they're not doing a whole lot and they're being, paid a monthly stipend to do a certain thing,
Mm-hmm.
how does that feel? So, yeah, I mean, when I think through, and I've had about a half a dozen full-time employees in the last 12 years. And most of them, I always understand that for the most part, when you're working at a really small business, like my business is, this is a stepping stone for most people, right? Like
Okay.
it's funny when I think about it, in the last week, I've talked to most of the former employees that I've had. We're all, for the most part, with a few exceptions, fairly close still. And the understanding has always been there that this is kind of a stepping stone. So I think that is where some of my hesitations come in. But then at the end of the day, when I think about myself, when I was an employee, like I wanted to show up and I wanted to do a good job and I wanted to do the work that I needed to do. So I think that's really where that push and pull is.
So put yourself in the place of one of your employees,
Mhm.
and you're now talking to Rachel, the boss. What would you like to hear?
I think this is the tough part is I think I would want to just be given a list every morning of what I need to be doing or at the beginning of the week. And I know that I'm not doing that for my team because I feel like that is almost too controlling. But now putting myself there, it would be really nice because that's what I do for myself, right?
Hmm.
I'm a passion planner gal, so I got one of these. And like this is what my week looks like. And I like to have it written out like that. So
Hmm.
and maybe it's a matter of having that conversation of working with each team member and establishing what they like do they like the list, would they prefer to hand me a list of what they would like to do and then we review it together, would they rather me just give them
Well,
what
I think
they're
I think you're the other part of this that is interesting to me is the notion that you are that you feel like you're imposing on your employees.
doing. Hmm.
Um, you're, you know, tell me, how does that feel to you? This idea that you feel like you're imposing on your will, so to speak.
Right.
You
And
know.
I think even hearing it out loud is kind of funny. It's like, well, that's literally your job is to do what I ask you to do, or, you know, and maybe it's a matter too of going back to the original employment agreement and looking at that and being like, okay, what do we even sign you up to do? Because I think things do shift and change over time.
Hmm.
That's always been kind of a hallmark of employees that I've had and of times that I've worked in small businesses is that, you need to sometimes just step up and step in. I think that's something that's really great about the team that I have now is that they are very experienced, especially in their respective fields. So
Hmm.
they just know what needs to get done. And I think that there is such a high trust level for me that I don't even feel like I need to delegate because I feel like they know. I know it's not even a feeling. I know they know what that needs to happen. But I do feel like they would like a little more direction from me.
Okay. So what would that look like if you had to start implementing a little bit more direction? What would that look like for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's going to come down to directing myself first.
Okay.
Is I think my biggest issue as we work through this is that I don't give myself enough time to think about and establish on a day to day, week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter basis what each team member needs to be doing. I get to the meeting with them or the call with them or the huddle with them and
Hmm.
then we talk about it. Whereas I feel like I need to go in with more of a plan because in my mind I'm thinking like I'm being this cool boss who's so collaborative, but in their mind, it reminds me so much of when I worked at a small print shop. There were it was myself, the owner's father, who was like the de facto sales coach, who's like retired and worked at Honeywell in the 60s and 70s. So like that
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
I love that. His name's Larry. I wonder what he's up to, Larry, if you're listening to this call. I hope you're still around. Yeah, he was great. We had a lot of fun working together. So it was those three. We were like the management territory, right? And then
Hmm.
we had a graphic designer and customer service guy, and then we had a person who actually ran the printing press. And we were a really small team. And so myself, the customer service person, and the printing press guy, like the three of us all became buddies, right? Because we're all kind of that same. Even though I was the go between like the owner management and then the operations people, and we would all kind of tease each other and hang out. And one time our boss kind of got in on the teasing and took it a little too far and
Hmm.
really upset our customer service person. And our boss couldn't understand, the owner of the company couldn't understand why we were all allowed to joke around with each other, but the minute he got involved, it's like, it turned into a problem. And our customer
Hmm.
service guy was like, because you can fire me at any moment. You're my boss. Like these two, like, the three of us that were all on the same level as far as employees,
Hmm.
it's a different environment. So I think that it's tough because I want that level of collaboration where we can feel like we're peers. But really, at the end of the day, I'm the one who signed their employment contract.
Yes.
And there is a level of as much as I would like to be fully equals with
Hmm.
my team, I get that that's really, on one level, that's not the case.
So what is what's the thing that that you are differentiating between you as boss and you as peer? What
I
is
think that's
that?
the issue is I think I'm not. in my mind, I'm the peer, and you know, we're, all on this level playing field because that's how I want to operate. But I do think that there is some comfort in boundaries, and there is some
Mm-hmm.
comfort in knowing that established. And I definitely am one of those people that I always hire family members and friends. I've hired other people that aren't family members or friends, but I generally do. I know that's considered like bad form. But to me, it's like these are the people that I care about the most and the people that I know the most. And so, yeah, a little nepotism, but they are qualified for the jobs. But I do find myself, having conversations, or when I put out, that I'm looking to hire, the people that come to me are family members and friends.
So and you're obviously free to hire whoever you are comfortable with in hiring, and if they,
Mhm.
like you said, if they're qualified to do the jobs, then they're qualified. However, if you examine who you're hiring and your tendency towards, people that you've known for a long time, or family that you're, really comfortable with, what
Okay.
is it about that element that is not applicable to hiring someone that is qualified but not a family or friend member?
So I think that it's there's this one step beyond that, is that typically when I'm hiring someone, even if they're family or friend, they come recommended by someone else. So,
Okay.
for example, my brother may say, "Have you thought about XYZ cousin for the role that you're describing?"
Okay.
I think he's also just tired of me complaining about being short staffed and knows that we have another family member looking for a job. So what's interesting is that the one family member that I did hire once upon a time, who worked for me for many years, I didn't know very well. Like we share a last name, but I didn't know him that well because we have
Yeah.
quite a large family. So like I said, on one hand, there is this familiarity. Or another longtime employee that I had in my printing business. Um, I knew her, we were friendly, but if I saw her on the street, we'd say hi, but it's not like we were, going out on the weekends
Hmm.
for drinks and hanging out. So I think there tends to be a familiarity with the people that I hire.
Hmm.
And there have also been, I think about this one woman that worked for me for a few years, who I'm still pretty professionally close with. She actually went on to start her own business, which is something it always really warms my heart when I see my former team members go on to start their own thing. Like that's
Okay.
something I really like. Um, and she was recommended by another employee. So I think it's because my life is so referral focused, right? I do business by referral.
Right.
I coach people on referrals. It's less that I end up hiring family and friends, and more that I hire people by referral.
Hmm.
And you're referred to people usually by a degree of separation or 2 degrees of separation. So yeah, I think I want things to be much more same footing collaboration. Like I have a distinct memory of another time when an employee of mine, who I, felt quite close with after working together for many years, came to me and just burst into tears. I said they needed to tell me something, and immediately started crying. And I'm like, "Oh no, are you sick? Like, are you dying?"
Right.
Based on the reaction. And it was that this person wanted to ask for a raise and didn't know how, and was concerned that the minute they asked me for more money, I was going to say, "We're a small business. We can't afford that. I guess you need to leave. I'm going to fire you now."
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
so we were able to have a really constructive conversation about, one day you're going to have another job that's not working with me. And
Hmm.
this is not the best way to negotiate for a raise. And then it turned into a very constructive conversation where I said, "All right, I want you to go back and I want you to take a look at the things you've implemented and the ways that you saved the company money, made the company money, and then we'll use that as a basis for talking about what your raise is going to be."
Okay.
As opposed to, "I'm going to cry and tell you that."
So you basically coached this person through how to ask you for more money.
And then hopefully that will help them later down the road. But I think the fact that they didn't even feel comfortable coming to me and explaining this without bursting into tears, that's where I'm like, "Oh, right, I am your boss. There is a level of power, control, whatever." And I think that makes me uncomfortable, knowing that I control certain
What's
aspects of
what
people's
what
lives.
is what's the discomfort there?
Because I want to be a helper. I want to, when someone's in need, it's really hard for me to see someone ask for help and not just go right in and want it, want to
So
help.
how can you take that helper attitude and be the boss at the same time?
I think therein lies the issues, because I want to be that friendly person. That, like, I'm just thinking through all these scenarios with employees, and it's like, okay, your employee texts you because they're going to be late to work because their car won't start. The answer isn't, oh, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and go pick them up. It's great. We'll see you when you get here.
Right.
Thanks for letting me know. Right. So I think that there just needs to be a little reforming in my mind about what it means to be someone's boss. And then also empathizing and recognizing that when someone comes to me, one of my employees comes to me, even if we do have a relationship, whether it's, you know, Eric, my very first hire ever, right? We'd known each other for a couple of years, and he'd freelanced for me for a while. But recognizing that there is a power dynamic, and how that might impact the way someone feels comfortable talking to you or approaching you. I
Hmm.
have heard from people that I'm intimidating. I don't get that. I don't understand that at all, but I've heard that. And kind of holding some space to realize that, or asking the question first if I feel like it might be on someone's mind,
Okay.
not waiting for
So
an employee to bring something up.
there is a certain amount of just how you are a leader within your
Mhm.
businesses. And you're absolutely right. One of the things that a lot of leaders struggle with is, you know, giving up some of their responsibilities. Like you said, well, it's just easier for me to do it, so I'll go ahead and do it. You, where does that come from?
That's a really great question. I think that as I'm a middle child, right? So I think there's a lot of that put in there as
Okay.
a middle child. So you're kind of the helper, right? You never got that I'm an only child feeling of being center of attention. So you're not looking for that. You're not that used to that. And then, there's this whole concept of like parentification. Not saying that my parents necessarily did that to me, but there's enough of an age gap between me and my younger sister that I wanted to jump in and help. That was
Hmm.
a big part of seeing my mom have three kids, and my parents navigating that and then jumping in and helping. So I think that's definitely part of it, is wanting to do that. And then I've always kind of been a bit of the ringleader in any friend group that I've been in, or whenever a class project happened, I was usually the one to be like, okay, everybody, this is the plan,
Okay.
right? And then end up doing most of it anyway, because that's how group projects
So
go.
that's an interesting thought, being the ringleader. Because
Hmm.
what are you doing when you're running a business? You're kind of the ringleader,
Right.
So you want to be helpful. So as a middle child, let's use that analogy. As a
Yeah.
middle child, you want to be the ringleader and be helpful to people. And whether you end up doing it all or not is that's a different tactic.
Sure.
But when you are the boss, you're still the ringleader.
Right.
You're still the focal point of all these other people's attention.
Hmm.
So how can you get where's the comfort level here that you can incorporate
Yeah.
from your experience?
Well, I think too, sometimes it's the duration, the ongoing, that I think can make things challenging. It's that presumably if things are going well, like, you're going to work with someone for years and years and years.
Hmm.
And it's just like any relationship, you start to settle into a comfortable place. And I think that when I've had employees leave, or unfortunately I did one time have to fire someone, which I think was more traumatic for me than for that person. That is the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life, is have to fire somebody. It
Yeah.
was so painful. I mean, because I knew it was coming, right? I knew all day that it was going to happen. They were
Yeah.
blissfully unaware until I sat them down and had to have that conversation. But I
Have
think like
that
with any relationship,
realization.
yeah,
Yeah.
with any relationship, maybe it's even approaching it that looking at things more on a project basis, um,
Okay.
and saying, okay, here's how we're going to divide up this project. Because I think I also have a big block when it comes to like forever, right? Like for the next, even saying for the next year, every single, which is funny because that was something that attracted me to BNI, is that my meeting was on Thursday mornings from 7:30 to 9. And I knew I had to be there. And I knew that consistency was the thing that was going to make the difference for me. Right.
Okay.
And that is something that I think, humans with our little part of our lizard brain or whatever evolutionary thing is in there that
Yeah.
makes us always be seeking out new opportunities. It's scary to say, like, okay, well, I am committing, just like we do right now with my team. Every morning at 9 a.m., we have this huddle. I'm committing to that. It's in the calendar. That's what we're doing. And I think what I need to really do to make that more effective is say, okay, every morning at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m., because I tend to have meetings at 7, I'm going to spend at least 15 minutes prepping, or maybe it's a matter of the night before,
Okay.
and getting past that block of like, I'm really concerned about adding one more thing to my calendar, even though it'll make my life ultimately easier. So I think if I look at things more on a per project basis, like really breaking down our tasks into projects,
Mm-hmm.
or even we were implementing the 12-week year concept. If you're familiar with that, Brian Moran's 12-week year, we did that
Yes.
for a couple of very specific things last year. And that was a lot of fun. We put together scorecards and we would check in on them. And it really helped everybody rally behind the things that were most important to them. But I've been meaning to re-implement it again after the summer, but it's hard to draw that line and say, these are the things I'm going to be focusing on when there's so much to do.
Yeah. Well, and just what I know about you and your business, and my involvement in what you do, there is a lot going on,
Mhm.
and you do take on a lot of projects. Um, so how do you? I mean, so how successful do you think this notion of doing things on a project basis uh, would work for you?
I think it would make it a lot more clear what the deliverables are on different timelines for
Okay.
each of our team members. I think that it would really clarify. I think that it would start to, because my biggest issue, just even aside from the employee piece, is this general guilt feeling. And I think it's really normal for business owners or people in sales to feel this because there are so many balls in the air all the time
Yes. Yes.
that something's not going to happen. And then sometimes you just kind of get paralyzed by the amount of things and you end up focusing on low value tasks because they feel the most urgent,
Right.
right? Like
So how do
there are
you?
a couple things on my list that I probably should have been done last week. They're still sitting and it's Tuesday of this week.
Yeah. So how can you then translate this idea of working on project lists and now give it to your employees?
Um, I think that's going to come from, instead of going into the conversation much more trying to be everybody's friend and everybody's peer and saying, oh, I mean, I think this became most obvious to me in like the once we had been March 2020, we shut everything down. Thankfully, a lot of the work we can do, we can either do remotely, collaborate that way. But there was definitely a really big disconnect. And I think one of the reasons why people have, and I tend to have employees that stick with me, I'd say like 3 to 4 years, right, is usually how much time I end up spending with someone before it's time for them to move on. And
Mm-hmm.
some less, some more, but generally pretty consistently about 4 years or so. And when we were in the height of the trying to figure out what was going on next and what was happening, I really just was not doing a great job of helping people figure out, like, prioritize throughout the day. And we get to the end of the day and then I would
Right.
feel like nothing got done and I'd be frustrated, but I didn't want to put that frustration on them. But I think they were frustrated too because they saw things piling up. Right. So I think that I need to go into those conversations instead of trying to say, I want to, of course, respect what people want to do professionally with their growth. But I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a matter of not just what do you want to do, but kind of, what is the JFK quote about not asking the world,
Yeah.
right?
Ask not
Right.
what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of a matter of, even when I think about when I give advice to people who want to start businesses and they say, well, I want to do this and I want to do that. It's like, right, but what does the market want from you? Like,
Yeah.
what is your unique proposition of something that you do well? That and I think that that's the way I need to approach those conversations, is instead of saying, what do you want to do? It's sort of, you do these few things well, or this list of things well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I envision your role being on this next project, right? Whether it's transitioning the leadership teams in BNI, or doing a big rollout of a new branding package for a print client. Everybody's got their different skill sets. And sometimes we have blind spots to even see what our own skill sets are. That's been something huge for me in my time in BNI, is that I have been continuously kind of surprised by what people resonate with, or what people see as my various skill sets. Like I never thought of myself as a strong public speaker necessarily. It was not part of my printing education at all, public
No, of
speaking.
course not.
Right. And when you hear someone else talk about you, which happens sometimes in business, like when someone's describing you, like I sat down for lunch with a real estate agent and I guess a business coach who more does like corporate classes, and listening to this real estate agent who's known me about 7-8 years, who helped me get into real estate myself and was involved with BNI with me for a long time, listening to him tell his business friend what he thinks is so much my skill set was really fascinating.
Hmm.
I was like, okay, that's really interesting to hear what you think I'm good at. So I think that is a way that I can continue to empower the people on my team, whether they're W-2 employees or the 1099 contractors. Everyone on my team right now has been on my team for over a year. So it's not like I've got new people I'm trying to onboard. And, I think that being a little bit more direct with employee reviews, and it's hard because there's the way that I hire, I know people, I know them by one degree of separation. So it's very rare that when I do an employee review, I have anything negative to say, right? There's like little redirects. Like when I did an employee review most recently, my only piece of like not 100% positive was that sometimes this person is too quick to solve little problems and doesn't allow clients to work certain things out on their own.
Yeah.
Like almost overloads them with options and information, where sometimes, the client really does need to figure out the color they want on their business card on their own. Right.
Yeah. Sometimes that's the case.
We can give them some options, but and once again, that's something that I struggle with too, is that I want to jump in there and help all the time. So I think it's not being less collaborative, but being more direct at the beginning of the collaboration.
Okay.
This is what I see in you. This is what I see your skill set are. And so this is where I see you on the project.
Okay.
Whatever that project may be. So I think breaking things down into individual projects will really help, as opposed to seeing the day like one giant task list that just keeps, like snowballing into a bigger list and bigger list until it gets unmanageable.
Okay.
That will really help. I think that maybe even having the team members kind of critique each other's lists. Like, what do you think about having this person do this?
Okay.
Because they see a different side or skill set for someone. I think those things will happen. And thankfully in both businesses, there is a bit of a seasonality to them. And they're different, which is great. That really helps. That's one of the reasons why the businesses have grown so well together. So I think those are some concrete things I can start working on right away, as we're really looking at the year and saying, okay, let's take a look at everything's pretty predictable.
Yeah. I want to take a pause right here. We need to get one more break in before we end the show. One more time, how can people get a hold of you, Rachel?
Yeah, across different social media platforms. You can find me at BNI Rachel. You can find my printing company, rsprinting2ps.com. And you can also visit a BNI chapter by going to bnichicago.com or emailing me, Rachel at BNI Chicago. There's no cost to come as a visitor. Come observe. You don't even have to be a business owner or salesperson to sit in on a BNI member.
You can just come and take a look.
Just come, take a look, meet the members, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break right here. When Rachel comes back, we're going to recap what she is going to take away from all of this, from today's conversation. If you would like to share your insights or comments, please do so on the transformationtalkradio.com website or the Facebook page, facebook.com/Transformation Talk Radio. We will be back in just a couple of minutes. Hey, welcome back again. So Rachel, what is it that you are going to walk away with today?
Yeah. I think that this has been really insightful, because it's given me some time to process that I need to be giving myself more time. I think I really need
Okay.
to sit down, whether it's, at the top of the week or at the end of each day, looking towards the next day and deciding, where are my team members' skill sets best utilized and where are mine best utilized. I
Hmm.
think that one of the things that I struggle with is that I like a lot of the parts of what I do. And so it's hard for me to give up certain things, or
Okay.
I say, oh, yeah, I can do that. And then I get to the end of the day and I realize, how was I going to call those 10 people? I had this other thing I was working on, even though I like to talk to the members of BNI. So I want to call them.
Right.
So I think really, taking a look at each major thing that we do in both businesses, in the printing company and in the membership organization BNI, and looking at them more on a project by project basis, and then that will give me an ability to really empower my team members instead of empowering them by collaborating and saying, "What do you want to do?" Empowering them by saying, "I think you're really good at this, this, and this, and so I would like you to take on this part of the
Right.
project." I think it's going to serve a couple purposes. One, it's going to, allow them to feel that trust and feel that job security, as
Hmm.
opposed to when I leave things too open ended. Like I feel like when it's too loose of a string, right? That's when you have problems,
Well,
right?
and that's really the challenge is, um as an employee, I'm not looking at the big picture. I'm not looking at, how do I run this company?
Hmm.
I'm the cog in the wheel. I love working here and I want to support you in what you're doing, but my role is to do something.
Right.
So it seems only natural that if you're going to be, the worker bee in a venture, then you need to be able to work.
Right. And I think that that has historically been something that I struggle with, is that I leave things too open ended, and
Okay.
then there's frustration because of it. And I think that I underestimate my role as a boss, right? As the signer of the check,
Right.
and what that can mean for someone, especially if they've got maybe a financial insecurity in their life, or some type of, past. Like a lot of people grow up with issues surrounding money and finances and aren't comfortable having those kinds of conversations,
Hmm.
and it's not just about, like the story I told. It's not just about, asking your coworker Rachel, who you see every day, who you talk to about everything in your life, about a small raise. It's about asking your boss, who can at any moment, depending on where you live, right? If you're in an at-will state, end your employment,
Yes.
right? So I think I sometimes forget that I do have a level of power that makes me even feel a little uncomfortable saying that out loud over
Hmm.
people and the way that their lives are and their lives go. So I think it's really recognizing that, getting a little more comfortable with that, and then giving people those parameters so that they feel like they always know where they stand with me. Because that's been something I've struggled with in the past with employers, is that sometimes you just don't know where you stand with someone,
Hmm.
and that can be a really scary place to be when you've got rent, mortgage, whatever due.
When the focus of your employee is they're looking over their shoulder,
Right.
then they don't focus on what you need them to do.
Right. And when I don't give people enough to do, I know that it can create that level of uncertainty. In my mind, I'm saying I'm giving you a break because maybe I know that there's a lot going on in their personal life, or they have other
Hmm.
big project they're working on for me. So I don't want to overload them. But then they're asking. And once again, I have a really great contractor who has been off and on my team for many years. And I've even hired him as a coach for me before. And he and I had a really frank conversation, a few months back, when I'd hired him for something, and then I wasn't really letting him do it, unbeknownst to me. Like I just didn't even. And he pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, I kind of feel like I've been put on the bench.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? Like, I kind of feel like you're doing the thing that you hired me to do." And so I
Yeah.
think it's being way more aware of that. And instead of getting to those employee huddles and getting to those team prep meetings to prep, I think I need to do a little pre prep, because at the end of the day,
Do
I'm the
your
boss.
own prep beforehand before you
Yes.
walk into those meetings
Right.
so
Right.
that you can give people the idea of, okay, I need you to do these three or four things. I need you to do these three or four things, and give them the direction that they need.
Right, precisely. Yeah. And when you and I were even prepping for this conversation, I was thinking that I have this fear of overloading people, but I don't know that I've ever really been told by an employee, like, you cannot put one more thing on my plate. Because I really encourage people not to check their email after work, not to check their email on the weekend,
Yeah.
to not give out their personal cell phone number to customers, because we just don't have those kinds of businesses, right?
Right.
And I don't want them taking work home with them. And I've always
Right.
been so hyper aware of that, that I think I need to be a lot more aware of, okay, so then what does their hours of employment and their hours, in the office, even though most of them are remote now, what does that look like? And not feeling like I'm putting too much on them during that time, and trusting that if I do, we're going to leave some space for them to let me know.
Right. Yeah. And having known you for as long as I've known you, I can't imagine you've imposed anything on anybody for any length of time.
Without at least being slightly aware of it,
Exactly.
or checking in to make sure they're feeling okay. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
it's such an interesting balancing act, and I've always taken being an employer as a really great honor, and I understand that my duty when I do employ someone is not just for them to work and make some money for me or
Yeah.
help me build my vision, but also taking a look at, what is their next step? Because once again, when you work at a really tiny company, I don't ever aspire to have even a 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 person company. I always plan on being a team of 10 or
Yeah.
less. I know that those aren't tend to be forever jobs.
Right.
And so whether it's, someone who is actually hired to do sales for me also wants to learn a little bit about graphic design software, I want them to be able to do that, and I want to
Hmm.
empower them in that way.
Okay.
So I think that, there are already some things that I do really well when it comes to making sure somebody feels like their job is amounting to something larger versus, they're just going to work and being unappreciated.
Yeah. I want to thank you very much for being here. I want to thank you for your willingness to be part of a process and to and to do this in a public forum. If anyone would like to contact me, my name is Mark Fechner. My email is mark@markfechner.com. You can go to my website, markfechner.com. And if you'd like to talk to me about your business, if you'd like to be a guest on my show, please sign up for a 30-minute free conversation. I'd be happy to do that. My next guest on the next show will be a manufacturing recruiter. His name is Fred Thompson, and he's had a very interesting go of it, given he has a very interesting perspective between what is the workforce, the talent that is out there, and what are they looking for, and the businesses that he is finding talent for, and having that conversation. So I'm really looking forward to that. If you'd like to join us, the Business Mind is airs the second and fourth Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, and 8 a.m. Pacific, here on transformationtalkradio.com. Again, thank you, Rachel. I really appreciate it. So until next time, be safe, be healthy, and be profitable. See you then. Thank you for listening to The Business Mind on Transformation Talk Radio. I'm Mark Fechner, where we focus on real people with real issues, and we tackle those issues in real time. I don't have the answers. I hope you find the answers within you. The Business Mind Show airs the second and fourth Tuesday of every month at 8 a.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com. Sometimes all you need is a change in perception. A certified coach will listen to your challenge, ask you intuitive, open-ended questions, help you find fresh perspectives, and then hold you accountable to reach your goals. Coaching is an investment in yourself that can create paths to greater success. To find out more about my coaching, go to markfechner.com.